I'm Grandpa Grill and I approve this message.
Good afternoon. We are here today raising awareness about the fact that the fight last year, when the American public spoke up, when people like you and me, our seniors, our young people, together we stood and we said no to President Bush's flawed scheme to privatize Social Security. And I think that's something that we can be proud of. But I need to tell you that today, unfortunately, we need to begin mobilizing again. Because in fact, the forces that want to impose privatization, something that would destroy Social Security, are at it again. In the last 3 months, President Bush, people from his staff, chief leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives have all been saying that they are going to push this again, despite the fact that it was overwhelmingly unpopular last year, despite the fact that it was President Bush's most public and biggest legislative failure. After talking about it in the State of the Union, he could not even get the Senate and the House, controlled by his own party, to endorse this radical scam to put forward on the American people. But he's being clear, they're going to push it again. They're not going to give up. Why? Because this is about giving a big government handout to Wall Street. It's about giving money to their friends on Wall Street. If you liked Halliburton, if you liked Enron, you're going to love what happens with the money from Social Security being diverted into these private accounts run by these con artists on Wall Street. But I want to tell you something that President Bush said, ominous words that he stated just 3 months ago on June 27, when he spoke at the Marriott Hotel in Washington, D.C. He said, if we can't get this done this year, I'm going to try next year. And if we can't get it done next year, I'm going to try the year after that, because it's the right thing to do. Well, if President Bush says it's the right thing to do, folks, that's probably a good indication that it is exactly the wrong thing to do. And privatization is the wrong thing to do. Why is privatization the wrong thing? We've talked about it today. We've heard the words coming out. But what it is essentially something that, if you looked at what Rick Santorum, our senator, who's supposed to represent us here in Pennsylvania, whose office is in this building, has put forward, is something that would divert money out of the Social Security system to put into the hands of individual folks, telling them, hey, you can take your own money and you can invest it on Wall Street. You can invest it in stock. You can do better than Social Security. Well, all the experts that have weighed in, chief economic advisors, economists who've looked at this, have said the reality is that people will probably lose more money investing on the stock market than they would likely get from having a unified program called Social Security, investing the tax dollars for everyone. What happens when you're 63 years old and suddenly the stock market tanks? Stocks fall. Hey, how many times has this happened over the last 20 years? Suddenly you find out that the money that you had intended to use for retirement, when you were on the verge of retirement itself, now the stock is worth half or even a third of what it was when you were looking at it just a few months earlier. That is what is wrong with the so-called personal accounts. That is what is wrong with privatizing Social Security. What kind of nation could call itself civilized and allow seniors to starve on the street and say, well, it's not my grandfather, it's not my grandmother, too bad for him? And what happens when the privatization scam falls through and President Bush and his cronies who want to shove this through are long gone? What happens then when we are back to the days of the Depression with seniors out on the street, seniors having to take jobs like many people do today in their retirement years, shoving hamburgers across a counter at McDonald's? No one is going to retire rich on Social Security alone. That's not the idea. The idea is that we say as a society, there is a minimum standard that we're going to uphold. There is a minimum level of civility, a minimal level of living that we are going to make sure our seniors have. And it's not just for people who are facing retirement today. It's for the many fine young people that we have here today joining us. Let's give them a round of applause, and give yourself a round of applause if you have a hand free. Let's hear it for young people who are standing up, because guess what? They are the ones whose future is being sold out by President Bush, by his cronies in Congress, by people in the Senate like Rick Santorum, who have said, going back 12 years, if he had his way, he'd push the retirement age back to 70 or higher, but that he didn't think he could raise the retirement age beyond 70. Rick Santorum wants to see you young people, when you are in your final years of life, when you are facing physical problems that will prevent you from working, his attitude is, get back out and work. The problem that he sees with Social Security is that people aren't dying young enough. That's the problem with our system. That people retire when they're no longer able to work, and they just live too long. That's the problem. That's what we're here to fight against. That's why we need you to sign the petition that we have here. Take a flyer. This is not just about Rick Santorum, our senator. It is about all of the people who supposedly represent us in Washington. We have this golden promise that we are asking Senator Santorum, Senator Specter, and in fact all of the representatives serving in the U.S. House of Representatives from Pennsylvania. We are going to all of them and saying, we are standing together to honor this golden promise of Social Security. We ask you to stand with us. We ask you to oppose privatization. We want them to speak out and stand with us and say no to privatization, no to personal accounts, and yes to Social Security. Yes to Social Security. Let's hear it. Honk if you love Social Security. Honk if you love Social Security. Honk to save Social Security. Honk if you love Social Security. Thanks so much for coming out today. Continue to stand up. Continue to fight. Use every available opportunity to demand that our senators and our representatives represent us and not their corporate fat cat buddies on Wall Street. Thanks for being here today.
All right.